You know that Fox News felt very exposed in this moment. They called yours truly dangerous and I believe reprehensible. We appreciate them giving us new marketing material.
Thanks to the PR team over there for doing our PR for us.
We appreciate it very much.
Welcome to Power Lines, presented this week by Beehive. I'm John Passantino.
And I'm Oliver Darcy.
Today, the latest Olivia Nuzzi scandal is turning up the heat on Vanity Fair. Fox News hosts and executives are once again being exposed for their private views behind the scenes. Rush Hour 4 is a go, thanks to Donald Trump. But first, Bari Weiss, the vaunted future of news at David Ellison's Paramount, is stirring the pot again, this time with her thoughts on how she wants to revamp CBS News. Oliver, happy Thanksgiving. How are you doing?
I'm all right, John. I got a fire going. For people watching, you can see I got a fire right there. We got a lake right behind me. We're in Washington State by Lake Wenatchee.
Oh my gosh! Wow, I've been out there one time before. It is beautiful, but it gets pretty cold out there.
You've been to Lake Wenatchee?
I actually have, yeah. I've been to Wenatchee.
What a coincidence.
I've been to Central Washington many years ago. It's a beautiful area. Up north from there to Winthrop, Washington, to the north of you. Chelan, tiny little towns, but they're incredibly cool Western towns. Are you out there apple picking, or what are you up to?
No apple picking. I don't think there are any apples right now. I don't know. It is snowing outside, and this is our Thanksgiving week retreat. This is where I'm writing the newsletter status every night, John, from this location.
That is great. It's a lot of fun. Well, I'm at home here and trying to hunker down as winter seems like it's up to an early start, thanks to the snow here on the east. So interesting this week, Bari Weiss, she's the Free Press founder. She is now also the CBS News editor-in-chief, thanks to David Ellison. She was speaking at a Jewish leadership conference earlier this month, where she said that she wants to use her new perch at CBS News to, quote, redraw the lines of what falls in the 40-yard lines of acceptable debate in American political and cultural life. As part of that, she mentioned that there are some charismatic figures that she would like to elevate, like Alan Dershowitz, the 87-year-old former Harvard professor and lawyer, and Dana Loesch, the former NRA spokeswoman who you might know, who used to be, I think she actually does like ads on Fox News now for like Super Beats. Have you heard that?
That's the natural conclusion of a lot of B-list conservative celebrities.
Bari Weiss is apparently a fan, and she spoke about them in terms of bringing sort of like the audience and news space back to a more moderate place, right? So center right, center left, sort of like we don't need these extremists. And she identified what she described as extremists. She says that we want to sideline voices like Hasan Piker, Tucker Carlson, and Nick Fuentes, and sort of get back to this center of the political divide where she says the vast majority of Americans actually are.
Why don't we listen to what she actually said?
Oh, yes, we have a clip. Let's do that.
How do you build trust in a moment of unbelievably low trust in all of our public institutions, especially the mainstream press? I think it's about who's in the room, right? Having people that are clearly, identifiably on the center left and on the center right in conversation with each other. And we've been doing so much of this at the Free Press. I was in where was I? Chicago. Last week, I think, I've lost all track of time, where Dana Loesch, former spokeswoman from the NRA, was debating Alan Dershowitz on guns. Now, these are people that have wildly different opinions on the Second Amendment, and yet showing that they can have good faith, very passionate, very charismatic disagreement and still like each other at the end of the day.
What a revolutionary idea, John, having someone on the left, someone on the right debate each other and then get along at the end of the day. I'm sure no one has ever thought of that approach.
No, this is a total revolution. I can only imagine that CBS News is going to just soar in the ratings on an idea like this. The highly coveted demographic of 18 to 45. I can only imagine they're going to be tuning in to Channel 2.
I mean, outside that though, outside the fact that I don't know if anyone wants to watch Alan Dershowitz ever on television. Can't imagine what the demo is for that audience. The approach that she's outlining is like, it doesn't really work in Donald Trump's America, because what she's basically saying, what she is saying, is she wants someone on the left and someone on the right to debate, someone from both sides. She's talking about both sides of the Second Amendment in that case, but she wants someone on each side debating each other. And of course, the problem is when you represent Donald Trump's point of view today, that often requires lying, it requires misinforming an audience to defend his point of view, because the president lies a lot. And so if you take any issue that's going to be on a CBS News program, on Face the Nation, on 60 Minutes, or wherever, you're going to have to, if you want to represent the MAGA point of view, bring on someone like Scott Jennings, who Bari Weiss coincidentally wants to hire, who is going to distort the facts, distort the reality of the situation. And so that's the inherent problem when you talk about both sides in Donald Trump's America. It's not like you have a good faith argument often coming from the right. It's that you have to have someone who is okay defending a liar on your air. And at the end of the day, if you are okay defending a liar and your job is to defend a liar, I don't think that you're an honest person.
Yeah, I think that like Jennings is actually a really good example of this, right? Because once upon a time, like he wasn't positioned as like the pro-Trump MAGA defender at nearly all costs, right? He was seen as a more centrist Republican, a voice of reason, somebody who maybe stood for principles rather than necessarily going on a show simply to play the role of defending Trump at all costs.
He was a Bush Republican. He came from the George W. Bush White House. Those people did not like Donald Trump.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of where everybody like Mark Thompson, the CNN boss, he's had the same idea here, which is like we're going to have rational conversation that represents America on the center left and the center right, and we're not going to platform extremists. But at the same, so to me, that just raises the question of like, how is this actually a revolutionary idea at all? And how is it that CBS News, among other news organizations, are not already doing this? This, to me, sounds exactly like what is already out there. Like, we regularly see these panels on every even MS Now, which is a progressive, cable news outlet, has somebody on from time to time to talk about the conservative perspective on these issues. They're not picking somebody in Crazy Town. They're not putting somebody like Tucker Carlson on, but at the same time, like they are putting people on who represent these views. So to me, it's like, I don't even understand how this is seen as like a new and important position for CBS. They're already doing this.
Yeah, every time you watch Face the Nation, you have a Democratic lawmaker talk about an issue and then a Republican lawmaker talk about an issue. And I don't know, again, I don't really know if I don't really think that's the right solution here. I think you want smart analysis, clear-eyed analysis that cuts through political ideology. You don't want someone who is just going to be adherent to defending Donald Trump at all costs on your air. You want someone who has actual conservative principles, who, from the right, to talk about the issues of the day. The problem is that Donald Trump has no principles whatsoever. And so if you want someone defending Donald Trump, which is really what these organizations want because they don't want to be perceived as anti-Trump, then you're going to have someone on with no principles who is willing to defend Donald Trump, at all costs. And that's what you see with Scott Jennings. He used to be a man who seemed to have some conservative principles. Now he's a man who just defends Donald Trump. So if Donald Trump doesn't like free trade tomorrow, he's going to defend protectionist policies on the economic front. If Donald Trump likes Zoran Mandami, today and hates him tomorrow, like you're going to see the MAGA pundit defend that. And I think that's the problem, is like you are basically saying you're going to platform people who don't stand for anything other than acting as a lawyer, basically, to defend Donald Trump on your air because you're afraid of being perceived as anti-Trump. And, if you want to look at what Bari is talking about is basically what the CNN 10 p.m. program hosted by Abby Phillip is, which is supposed to be discussion from the left and the right where they talk rationally and they get along at the end of the day. And that often, deteriorates into a circus. And I don't really think that's a good representation of like what people want when they're thinking about where to get their news information. And I don't really think that's like the smart journalistic thing to do either. So it's really unclear. I think both on a business front, I'm not really sure who wants to watch this. Like no one really wants to watch Alan Dershowitz. So from a business standpoint, I don't think that's great for the ratings. And then from just a journalistic standpoint, this both sides approach is really tired and does not work in the Donald Trump era.
Yeah, I agree with you. Also, CNN is a 24/7 cable streaming and cable platform. So, there's a lot of shows where they do have panel discussions. CBS News doesn't really function like that. I mean, they do have a streaming platform, but it's very few viewers of that. Where would they even do this sort of thing? Like, are we going to like have CBS Evening News, which is a 22-minute show between ad breaks, and then toss to Dershowitz and Dana Loesch to hash it out on like Zoran Mamdani? Like, what format would this even look like?
Maybe they could do it on the CBS morning show, but you're right. They don't have the same airtime as a cable news program.
No.
And I think Bari ran into this problem when she tried programming the big Secretary of State, the former Secretary of State's coming on to talk about the Israel deal, was that they didn't have actual airtime to book those people on. So they booked them on their digital platform, which got like a few hundred views, on their YouTube channel.
But there's no viewers for that.
Yeah,
so
no one watched it. And no one watched it either. So,
And here's the question that I have. Bari Weiss comes into CBS News not long ago, and she gives this, impassioned first rallying cry to the troops there. And her first thing she says is, we're going to do the effing news. What part of doing the effing news is we're going to put on partisan voices from the left and the right to like hash it out? If you're doing a reported piece, Oliver,
also, by the way, in this case, Dershowitz, I guess, is on the left here.
Are you calling Dana Loesch on the phone to get her perspective on the? Of course not. This isn't doing the news at all. This is just filler talking head stuff that you would imagine not long ago she would be just adamantly opposed to. And it's hard for me to understand how it is that her modus operandi here is to, go forth and deliver the news that America needs in this moment, just the facts, just the truth. And now we're saying we need to actually put a bunch of political voices on who are just going to present different sides of things and muddy the waters. I don't understand how that actually is anything different or better than what is already out in that space.
It's not. I think what she's really good at doing is dressing up tired old ideas to sound new and flashy and hip. And if you haven't actually wrestled with these issues, if you haven't been in a newsroom and dealt with these issues firsthand, like maybe David Ellison, it sounds like, oh, wow, Bari is so youthful and she has like these great new ideas and we should really put her in charge. But if you've actually grappled with these issues, you know that there's nothing there. They're actually tired old ideas that don't work. John, I will say we did get some criticism. We wrote about this in our newsletter status.
I was just going to ask you about this.
And I woke up this morning as we were preparing for the show. There was no email or anything about this piece that was coming. And there's this sort of a hit piece, I would say, in Mediaite by the editor-in-chief, Colby Hall. And he wrote about what we have basically been discussing. And he says, I'm just going to read to you what he says, because I actually can't make sense of it. But maybe you can, John. He says, Darcy's question about bad faith actors is real. Any newsroom attempting to host an argument in the Trump era confronts the fact that a significant faction refuses to play by normal rules. So he's agreeing with us there. But his critique assumes Weiss is building a format that requires symmetrical representation. Nothing in her remarks suggested that. She wasn't sketching a lineup. She was describing a theory of trust. And I have a hard time understanding what he's saying here, because it sounds to me like she's saying, I want people on both the left and the right to argue about issues, which sounds to me like symmetrical representation. Do you have any idea, John? Have you read this piece?
I skimmed it myself, and I'm also perplexed by it, because he says here that bringing center-left and center-right voices like Loesch, and Dershowitz into this are not actually accomplishing center-left and center-right.
He goes on, he says, that's the crucial distinction Darcy missed. Both sides is a mechanical exercise. Find someone from each camp and let them swing at each other, which again seems to me like what Weiss wants to do. But he says Weiss was outlining something entirely different, letting audiences see how editorial decisions are made, including the decision that some claims don't merit equal weight. That judgment has always existed. Weiss wants to stop hiding it behind institutional neutrality. Like, what is he talking? I actually genuinely don't understand the point of this piece. It sounds like a lot of words mashed together to sound smart, like a takedown, but it doesn't actually grapple with the core issue at hand, which is that she's saying she wants someone from the left and the right on her air to debate an issue, which is, again, sounds to me very much like she wants both sides, which is what we said. So.
Yeah, I actually think he just flatly gets it wrong here by saying that Weiss is outlining something different, which is letting audiences see how editorial decisions are made. This is not putting a webcam in the newsroom and in your editorial meetings every day.
Which is also an idea that some people have floated at time to time, which is a terrible idea that probably would not fly by the lawyers. But you're right. She never even says that in her remarks. We played the remarks.
No, I watched it. She didn't say that. Instead, she's saying that we had a debate at the Free Press, which very few people watched on the YouTube channel, had a couple thousand views. In fact, Glenn Greenwald and others were mocking that the other day, that it had only hundreds of views after a day of being online. She was saying we should put these people on to hash it out and have these discussions because they represent center left and center right. Never mind the fact that people like Hasan Piker are not extremists. Funny enough, he actually responded on X about this saying, wait a minute, I actually was invited to come on CBS. I guess I'm one of these extremists and she doesn't want me there. This whole thing is like not well thought out. I think we're watching her sort of come up with these ideas in real time without actually having any sort of real direction for it. I think she's going down the same road as other news bosses have. These are on their face, let's say, a good idea because social media is taking people and really dividing them. It's putting them into far extremist camp. Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson are a perfect example of that. I think the sort of like North Star goal of like, we should be elevating mainstream voices who are not crazy, racist, demonizing others, a noble goal. Except for when you actually start naming these names and you look at people like Dana Loesch, that's what she has done. When she represented the NRA and was at the Blaze and these other places, she would use her platform to aggressively go after people.
She called reporters the rat bastards of the earth. This is someone that Bari Weiss apparently thinks deserves a platform on CBS News. Someone who calls journalists, the people that on the network, rat bastards of the earth, and then defends it. As recently as this week, she was defending that remark.
I mean, doesn't that make sense, though, that she'd want to platform that? If 40% of the country is a Trump supporter and he regularly lashes out at the press and talks about the enemy of the people, well, there you go. That's a mainstream point of view now. But that's exactly the problem that you bring up, which is that you quickly run into this issue of platforming these voices and their sole job just becomes to both sides everything. And
yeah, the problem is I think everyone wants honest, people on air that represent a wide array of views, right? If you're an honest, good faith, engaging in good faith, I think that's great. Like if you were talking about one issue and you had a bunch of people on that had different views and they genuinely exchanged those views and debated them, that would be a noble goal. The problem is that Donald Trump and the people who defend him tend to abandon their principles in support of Donald Trump. And so there are no, I mean, maybe you know of one, John. Who are the honest people out there that are Donald Trump supporters on television who go on and defend him? Who are the honest Donald Trump, there aren't really any. I mean, the problem is that defending Donald Trump at all times on television requires lying, spinning, cherry picking the facts, distorting reality. And so you see someone like Scott Jennings, who was a traditional conservative who used to criticize Donald Trump, now on air defending him at all costs. There's nothing that Donald Trump can do that Scott Jennings won't defend. And so by default, if you want someone representing that worldview, the MAGA worldview, you're inviting people who are not honest brokers on your air. And that's the problem that every news boss faces. And Bari Weiss and Mark Thompson and all these other people who lead newsrooms refuse to actually grapple with that reality. They just, and they go on these panels and they don't get hard questions, and they go places where they don't have to grapple with this thorny issue. But that is the real problem when it comes to this approach that they outline.
Yeah. She was sitting next to Ben Shapiro, actually, as she made these remarks, funny enough. Somebody who has definitely struggled with this same issue of dealing with Donald Trump and being principled as a conservative. And we've seen him sort of wrestle back and forth of how to deal with this stuff. Sometimes he calls him out. Sometimes he calls out Trump. Other times, I feel like it's a pretty inexplicable defense of him.
The Ben Shapiro of 2015 and 2016 was the never support Donald Trump. The Ben Shapiro 2024 was the guy who hosted a campaign event and literally campaigned for Donald Trump. So yes, occasionally he calls out the far excesses of Trumpism, but by and large, he is a Trump supporter, and he does defend a lot of the, I think, disturbing things this administration is doing.
All right. Well, when we come back, Fox News hosts and execs are once again being exposed for their private views. We've got new messages, both over email and text. We'll be back.
If you're like me, your skin needs some extra care this time of the year. Between colder weather and the holidays fast approaching, it can feel like nonstop stress to your system. That's why I've continued to rely on OneSkin. You know how much I love the OS01 face lotion. So much so that I'll be gifting it to John for the holidays this year. John, congratulations, that's your Christmas present.
I can't wait.
Seriously though, it's been invaluable to have a daily routine that delivers both powerful skincare and longevity benefits, all in just a few simple steps.
Certified safe for sensitive skin, OneSkin products are free from over 1,500 harsh or irritating ingredients. Dermatologist tested and have been awarded the National Eczema Association's seal of acceptance by the NEA, delivering powerful results without the side effects.
All of OneSkin's products are designed to layer seamlessly and replace multiple steps in your routine, making skincare easier and smarter at every age.
OneSkin also just launched their limited edition holiday sets, including the Nightly Rewind gift set. Oliver, we gotta get this, which is one of those rare gifts that's both impressive and genuinely useful. Actually, my mother-in-law would love this, providing an upgrade to anyone's nightly routine, featuring their new best-selling face moisturizer, which I think you've been using, their new peptide lip mask, and a cooling gua sha tool.
John, that's what I want for Christmas. So
I want a gua sha tool.
Take notes. Each component of the set is designed to work together, so I can use that with the face lotion, as your body enters its natural nightly repair mode, helping renew skin at the cellular level for a stronger, smoother, and more resilient skin.
I'm still excited about the cooling gua sha tool.
Sounds very nice.
For a limited time, try OneSkin for 15% off using code STATUS at oneskin.co/status. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you.
Welcome back. So, Oliver, this week, we got new text messages and emails released in this big Smartmatic lawsuit that continues to play out in the courts against Fox News. This, you might remember, happened in the wake of the 2020 election. Fox News hosts and the network aired, a bunch of false allegations about voter fraud and the rigged election, all of this to aid Donald Trump's idea, this narrative that was being pushed that the election was rigged for Joe Biden and that machines were sort of, behind the scenes changing votes, right? Okay, totally nonsensical. But as part of this big lawsuit, text messages and emails from the discovery are continuing to come out. This week, we got a fresh cache of them. This time, showing some pretty interesting revelations. One of the big ones, I think, here is Tucker Carlson, who obviously was the big primetime 8 p.m. host at the time, behind the scenes was calling Donald Trump a total piece of shit. That's a direct quote. Sean Hannity was also talking behind the scenes, too, about how actually Donald Trump will not be crazy despite what people say after losing the election, and that he will very calmly give up the seat of power, and that he would actually concede the election. He says, this will happen. I know it for a fact. One more funny thing here about Hannity is he also said that he recognized that Donald Trump may have actually been able to win the election if he took COVID more seriously the pandemic. He said, in my opinion, the masks from the COVID era should have been embraced. And I said it all on the air. Did he? I don't know about that. I do think this is pretty amazing. I mean, for the millions of Fox News viewers out there who feel very strongly that the network is on their side, it's MAGA, they got American flags at pretty much every ad break now with the network logo, that behind the scenes, their biggest stars were scrutinizing and honestly criticizing Trump pretty aggressively.
I think it, again, John, highlights that Fox News at its heart is not a real news organization, because news organizations don't hide the truth as they know it from their audiences. And that's exactly what these messages show. It shows that Fox News hosts knew Donald Trump was crazy. They viewed him as a, quote, piece of shit behind the scenes. But on the air, they covered for him. They ran his propaganda. They argued that the election, may have been stolen, or at least they gave a lot of air to those claims. And they lied to the audience. They deceived the audience. They pushed the big lie. And they all knew behind the scenes, the top executives, the top hosts, they all knew that what they were doing, what Donald Trump was doing was dishonest. And yet they still pushed it. And it almost comes back to what we're talking about in the first segment. Defending Donald Trump requires knowingly lying to the audience. And so this is a great example of that. The Fox News hosts, they couldn't not defend Donald Trump in 2020 because they were terrified they'd lose their audience to others who would, like Newsmax or OAN. And so these hosts went on air and they did their best to prop up Donald Trump's false claims about the election being stolen. And now they've had to pay a lot of money, $787 million in the Dominion case. And this Smartmatic case is now making its way through the courts, and they're probably going to have to pay money on this one as well.
It's starting to seem like it. We are definitely heading for a trial in this case. The judge continues to side with Smartmatic on it, despite all of Fox's attempts to slow it down or to get it tossed. One other email that I thought was really interesting that came out is Rupert Murdoch, the Fox News founder and octogenarian who oversees all of the Fox empire. He wrote to his son Lachlan after the 2020 election, where he says he acknowledged that Fox News viewers were fleeing the channel because the channel had not yet fully embraced election lies like Newsmax and OAN. He said, "We're getting killed in the audience numbers," he wrote to Lachlan, all day long. And in another one, he wrote that he was also getting criticism for quote, saying leading voices are encouraging a stolen election bullshit and pushing the January 6th rally. So I think that this is really interesting because what we're seeing here in this moment in time is that they were acutely aware that the audience wanted, that they had been listening to Donald Trump. They've heard about these election lies that were being promoted. And Fox executives were saying behind the scenes that they were absolutely aware of the fact that their audience was fleeing. And we saw that in real time, right? Newsmax at one point came up and rivaled. I think they were like the number 3 cable news-ish network for a moment, surpassing others. I think that speaks to the fact that the network, after this election, really made some calculated decisions about what they were going to put on the air because they were very worried about losing their audience in this moment.
Yeah, they were not operating this organization, again, like a news organization, which is that you tell the facts to the audience, and sometimes the audience might not like to hear what the facts of the situation are, right? Sometimes they might be depressed and they might tune out. But Fox News is running this in a much different way. And so they want to give the audience what they want. And what they wanted in 2020 was to hear that Donald Trump really won the election, that sinister forces at the behest of Joe Biden and the Democrats stole the election, that there was a lot of foul play, that there was voter fraud, all this stuff, right? And so Fox News hosts fanned the flames of this. Some of them didn't outright say that the Dominion machines or the Smartmatic machines were changing the votes, although they did, give air to a lot of those claims. But, there was other stuff, where Sean Hannity was airing. I remember surveillance video and questioning whether, something fishy had happened, or, there was all sorts of that stuff happening as well. Trying to make the bigger point that maybe this election was stolen from Donald Trump, and it wasn't. They knew it wasn't. And they still broadcast those lies. And I think that if I'm a Fox News viewer and I'm seeing these emails, I kind of would wonder why I'm watching this channel, because you watch these voices because you think they are giving it to you straight, not being calculative behind the scenes and spinning you because they just want to profit off of you watching their channel. And that's exactly what these emails show, is that Rupert seemingly, or a lot of these executives, didn't really care as much about what was right, what was wrong, the truth behind the scenes, informing the audience with the reality of the situation. It was really about, how do we keep them watching Fox News? And if we are too mean to Donald Trump, they're going to tune out and they're going to go to Newsmax, and we don't want that to happen.
Yeah, one of the things that drove this big backlash against Fox after the election was that Fox was the first network to call the state of Arizona for Joe Biden. And that they were way ahead of anybody else, including, the other news networks, the Associated Press. They were way out in front on it. They turned out to be correct, but it really drew backlash from the Trump MAGA audience. That then led to some interesting messages between Tucker Carlson and the Fox News chief political anchor, Bret Baier, who has his own program. Tucker had texted him or emailed him saying, I just want to help out. What should I do in this moment? Because the audience is so furious that we've already called this election for Donald Trump. And Bret Baier, I think very interestingly, he suggested that he grill the head of the Fox News decision desk on his show about the decision to call this Arizona race, correctly, by the way, for Joe Biden. I thought that was quite revealing, because we've seen other messages behind the scenes where Bret Baier has also suggested that the network should revisit this decision to give Arizona. Now, this might seem like a minor thing. It's one state. This was a very big deal, right? If Joe Biden wins Arizona, he doesn't even need some of the other states. It means it's all over with, right? He's the president. And if MAGA and Donald Trump are pushing this idea that this election is stolen, and Fox is the only one way out there in front saying actually he won, it puts this whole concept in disarray. I think it's a very revealing message for Bret Baier, who is supposed to be, their very serious newsman. He's not supposed to be a partisan host. He's not an opinion host. And he's also saying you should grill this guy. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I don't want to be their colleague. Right? Can you imagine being their colleague? Like, that's it's not really collegial. I kind of think it goes back to the main point, is that they're all terrified of losing their audience. And they felt like that Fox News felt very exposed in this moment. Some of the emails that came out, John, we were talking about this earlier this week, show the public relations team very, very much paying attention to what us media reporters were writing about, in the aftermath of all of this. And they were very much keeping tabs. And, there's one email where the Fox News PR chief, Irina, she says she's yelling at Brian Stelter via text message. And there's another email where they're paying attention to what Jeremy Barr, the then Washington Post reporter, now Guardian reporter, is doing. They called yours truly dangerous and, I believe, reprehensible for accurately reporting on their dishonesty. And so that they were taking the situation very seriously and monitoring how it was being portrayed in the public's eyes, because they knew that they were very exposed, and this was not really they were not on defensible grounds here. And I think that it reverberated throughout the organization, whether it's Rupert Murdoch and Lachlan Murdoch, whether it's Suzanne Scott, whether it's the host, Tucker and Brett and others, or whether it's the PR team. They were very much worried about, I think, permanent damage that this could cause the network, and that, as they say, trust is built up over a lot of time, and it can be lost in an instant. And it was very possible back then that they could have lost trust with their audience, because they, ironically, were to some degree trying, honest with the Arizona call and others. So it was a big problem for them.
Yeah, I think they also called you an ass behind the scenes too. So you
Did they?
really were getting,
I don't know if they did.
You're getting high marks.
I don't know if they did that. I think they had other words though. They had a lot of words. We appreciate them giving us new marketing material. John, I think we gotta work this into our status marketing material. You know, read the newsletter. Fox News has deemed dangerous. Thought police like almost, right?
Thanks to the PR team over there for doing our PR for us.
We appreciate it very much.
All right. Well, this remains to be seen. This case, the Smartmatic case, is likely going to trial at this point. Now, last time around with Dominion, this was the other major lawsuit that they faced. We were seated there together in Delaware waiting for this thing to go to trial, and they settled it at it's not even the 11th hour. It's like the 12th hour. It was like on the finish line. They settled this thing.
Well, it went overtime. It was supposed to start, and it didn't start. And then we were like, "What's going on?"
There were jurors seated in the room, just waiting for them to come in. No lawyers.
Yeah,
anyway. It was quite a moment. So we will see now what happens here. It's not a great
prediction,
situation
John?
for Fox.
What's your prediction? How's this end?
I think it ends in a settlement. I think that it's very damaging. I think that they don't want to put Rupert, Lachlan, Brett Baer, all these stars on the stand. This would be a media circus, and I think there would be a lot of attention on it. Yes, the 2020 election is in the past, but Donald Trump is the president again. So it's not like we have a whole different set of characters in the political space. It is about the very person who is currently the president again and defending him on the air, and how the network decides who, what narratives, I guess, it sets on the air as they pay a very close attention to their ratings. And I think that this is not a great moment for them to have to go through that again.
Yeah, can you imagine Sean Hannity on the stand and being asked whether the 2020 election was, rightly won by Joe Biden, and then thinking about all the other executives and hosts who would be asked that question and how Donald Trump would be reacting to that and what he would think. I mean, it would be very problematic. I mean, he might again turn his back on Fox News. They've made amends since then, but he could very well again turn his back on Fox News and direct his audience not to watch it because of what is happening at a trial. And so that would pose a business risk for Fox. I can't imagine a world in which they allow that to happen. I imagine that they will settle this case, even though they, of course, no one says you're going to settle until you actually settle. And sometimes it goes to the 12th hour, but I think they'll get a deal done here.
Yep, I sure do too. All right, when we come back, the latest Olivia Nuzzi revelations that are turning up the heat on Vanity Fair's new editor.
Let me take a quick minute to tell you about the platform we use to run Status. It's called Beehive, and I've got a special offer for readers coming up. But first, here's a little background on why Beehive was right for Status. When I started this newsletter, I needed a platform that could grow with us. Something powerful enough for serious publishers, but simple enough to build without a large team of engineers or designers.
That's exactly what we found with Beehive. It was built by the same team behind Morning Brew, so they understand what it takes to grow an audience and build a real business around your work. Since launching, two things have made a huge difference. First, our newsletter actually reaches people because the deliverability is outstanding. We don't really have to worry about spam filters anymore. Second, the paid subscription setup is incredibly easy. This is where you can charge for access to your newsletter. Beehive handles payments, subscriber management, all of it. That lets us stay focused on the journalism while the platform turns our work into a sustainable business.
Whether you're an independent writer or running a larger publication, Beehive gives you everything in one place. A clean editor, a website for your publication, powerful growth tools like referrals and recommendations, and multiple ways to make money from day one. If you're thinking about starting a newsletter or switching platforms, Beehive is offering Status readers 30% off your first 3 months with code STATUS30.
Visit beehive.com/status. That's BEEHIIV.com/status and start building your newsletter today. Welcome back. So Oliver, this week, the Olivia Nuzzi scandal continues to unfold over at Vanity Fair. As we all know now, she was brought back to the magazine under new editor Mark Guiducci. She previously was a writer over at New York Magazine. After her relationship with RFK was exposed, first in Status last year, she was suspended and then left the publication. But now she has this new position. She has this new book coming out, and we're learning new revelations about not only her relationship with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who now runs America's health agencies, which is astonishing, but also that she had this other alleged relationship with Mark Sanford. There's some questions about how Vanity Fair is responding to this and its parent company, Condé Nast. It's put the editor over there, Mark Guiducci, and I think in a pretty uncomfortable position. The magazine put out a statement on this whole thing this week, saying that they were reviewing Olivia Nuzzi's, working relationships, it seems, with her subject matters, and that they were taken by surprise, they say, by this whole matter. That seems a little questionable to me, given that they hired her knowing that she had this relationship with RFK, and possibly knew that she was going to have a forthcoming book that would also contain, let's say, just salacious details about this relationship with RFK. I mean, there's there's stuff that I don't even want to say out loud that's going to be in this book.
Well, and then they chose to publish an abstract nude portrait of Olivia in the magazine, which is carrying her excerpt from her book. So it's almost like they were playing into some of this. I frankly don't know why Olivia would commission that drawing, or why why she would agree to it. I don't know why Vanity Fair decided that was a good idea to publish that, but we reported, Natalie reported in Status on Sunday that this was going to be in the magazine, and sure enough, it's in the magazine, and it's a new drawing of Olivia. So a lot of strange decisions, I'd say, at Condé Nast. Hard to say that they didn't know that they might be in a position like this, given Olivia's well-documented history. It's also their job, I think, if you're hiring someone like this, to vet them pretty well, to say, hey, obviously there was that whole RFK thing, but if we hire you, is there anything else that we should know about that could come out that would embarrass the publication? Like, that would be a conversation that Mark should have had. I imagine did have, but he should have at least had it with Olivia ahead of hiring her. But again, it seems like they kind of courted controversy. Why else would you run a nude portrait of her in Vanity Fair? Like, why would you do that? Why? It actually boggles the mind. Like, I don't know what Mark is doing, but like, that was a very strange decision. And I think that's being generous. And I think the problem for Vanity Fair and Condé Nast and, Anna Wintour and Roger Lynch, who are this is very much reflective, I think, on them as well, because ultimately Anna Wintour is the one who oversees Vanity Fair, and Roger Lynch is the CEO of Condé Nast, which publishes the magazine. I think the problem for them is that Ryan Lizza, the very much estranged ex-fiance of Olivia, is continuing to publish these embarrassing Substack articles in which he airs dirty laundry and kind of opens the closet door. And the problem for Vanity Fair is they don't really know how many of these entries there are going to be. There's been 2 so far. There's going to be a 3rd. It seems like there might be as many as 8 coming in the next few weeks. Like, this is going to be a drip, drip, drip. It seems like he's instead of Ryan Lizza cutting off the limb with one, swell foop of the knife, he is cutting it up in pieces to cause maximum pain to Olivia. And it's also at the same time causing maximum pain, I think, to Condé Nast and Vanity Fair. The question for them is, how much pain are they willing to tolerate here? And also, are they, from a journalistic standpoint, okay with someone who has breached basic journalistic lines seemingly more than once?
Yeah, it raises a lot of really good questions about what they knew before bringing her back on, and now what they know. Our colleague Natalie Korak did some really great reporting on this whole situation this week, going inside Condé Nast and Vanity Fair, and learning a bunch of new information here. One thing that I think pertains to this is that in her book that is still forthcoming, She writes at length, Natalie says, about her penchant for lying. I think that sort of strikes to the heart of this whole conversation about ethics in journalism and whether or not Vanity Fair should be hiring somebody, attaching their brand and reputation to her. I mean, she's using Vanity Fair to publish the first excerpt from her book. They're not only putting that in the print magazine, but they're also, like you said, we first learned that they are also publishing this nude drawing of her in it that when we first heard of it, thought maybe it was going to be like sort of a silhouette, but it instead is more of a full frontal thing. It's quite surprising.
But John, when I first heard about this, I think I texted you this. And I was like, "Are we sure this is accurate? Are we sure? Like, this seems like this can't be. Like, why would Vanity Fair possibly decide to do this? Like, where are the adults in the room here, right?" And no, sure enough, Natalie nailed it down. But now the portrait's out there, and it is a nude portrait of Olivia.
It's really something. But I think all of this gets to, like, why would Vanity Fair risk their reputation bringing her in as part of, a whole series of high-profile hires? I think this all points back to wanting a big splash, wanting to drum up excitement and publicity for this publication. But it's hard to see this any other way than it's just blown up in their face and really harmed their reputation. Behind the scenes at Vanity Fair, too, where she has been titled West Coast editor, despite only living there for a few months, we've learned also that she hasn't even been completing her editing assignments, including in this big, high-profile, splashy Hollywood issue that is going to hit newsstands soon. And in addition to that, she's not showing up to meetings. Others are scratching their heads and wondering what is going on. Is she, what is here? We've learned, though, that Nuzzi's employment there is maybe not your normal sort of full-time employment that you might think of, but that she's on a contract. And this is a very short-term contract that apparently ends at the end of this year. We're in November now. So theoretically, this contract ends next month. Do you think that provides an early exit for everybody involved here?
I mean, it would be shocking if Vanity Fair claimed that was it was only a short-term contract, given they named her West Coast editor in a splashy press release. So no one's going to buy that excuse. I think one of the other issues too is, again, is she being honest, addressing the allegations that she's facing now? And so when she was accused of having a romantic relationship with the former governor of South Carolina, Mark Sanford, her lawyer put out a statement saying she never had an improper relationship with a subject while covering that subject. And then Ryan Lizza comes out and says, yeah, it was a few months after where they actually ended up romantically, linking up. But it seemed like a very lawyerly response that wasn't entirely honest. Like, has she outright denied a relationship with Mark Sanford? No. She said she didn't. Her lawyer said she didn't engage in an improper relationship while covering him. But, I'm not really sure if you're Anna Wintour or Roger Lynch and you're reading this and you say, okay, so she told us she didn't, she gave a very lawyerly statement, kind of trying to deny it without explicitly denying it, giving herself some wiggle room. And then Ryan Lizza says, oh, well, it was, I guess later on and a few months later where they explicitly had this romantic relationship, or at least he caught her having the romantic relationship. So I don't really know how much goodwill that's going to engender. And I think it probably might raise some questions if you're Condé Nast brass. Like, is she being honest with us even now? And if she's written about how she's maybe not been honest in the past in her book, like, these things can't bode well for her future at Vanity Fair. It's strange to me that she didn't instead come out and just say, look, I've made mistakes in the past. I've learned from them while I've been in exile for the last year. I've matured as a person. I've grown as a journalist. I asked for a second chance. It's very strange that instead of doing that, she is trying to sort of either weather the storm by splitting hairs or by ignoring the hurricane that's very much, whipping up category 5 winds at her doorstep. But I guess we'll see what Condé Nast ultimately does. I think it actually at this point, though, reflects more on the magazine Vanity Fair and the organization than really Olivia. So,
yep. I think with Liza's continued drip on this, I think that the holidays might present themselves as an easy time, nice quiet time for perhaps Vanity Fair and Nuzzi to go their separate directions. Doesn't sound like behind the scenes she's doing a lot in terms of editing work for them anyway. So maybe this whole thing just sort of goes quietly into the night over the holidays. Changing gears a little bit here, Paramount, Oliver.
just a little bit.
It's a little bit. I don't know if you saw this. They're going to release a new chapter in the Rush Hour film series. Remember this cop buddy film series with Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker? Apparently, they're bringing the franchise back. Paramount is going to release this thing. It, of course, then opens the door for the disgraced director Brett Ratner to return. He was the one behind the original 3 films with Jackie and Chris. The sort of interesting thing about this is it's not just the brainchild of David Ellison, who now runs Paramount. Apparently, it is because of a big personal push from no one other than Donald Trump himself. Our colleague over at Semaphore, Max Tani, broke this news over the weekend, saying that Trump had personally intervened to make this sequel happen. This is totally nuts. Why does Donald Trump even care about Rush Hour?
I don't think Donald Trump cares about Rush Hour. Maybe he does. I don't think he does. I think he cares about Brett Ratner, the disgraced director of the film, who's trying to make it happen, who has spent a lot of time at Mar-a-Lago in the last few years and who is doing the Melania Trump documentary and obviously has a relationship with the Trumps. And he clearly wants it to happen. And I think perhaps Ratner may have made it known to Donald Trump and others in the orbit that, he couldn't get support. And so Donald Trump maybe has intervened on the behalf of Brett Ratner. That's the only thing that makes sense, because Donald Trump, it's hard to imagine him sitting on a couch watching Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker, go at it in an action comedy. Doesn't seem like his cup of tea. He much prefers watching Fox News.
It's so weird. I get the nostalgia idea of these films from decades ago. And
Fantastic
maybe Donald Trump used to watch them.
I very much enjoy. I remember seeing Rush Hour as a kid accidentally. My mom took my sister and I to the movies. The one we wanted to see, I can't remember what it was, but it was sold out. And so we ended up seeing Rush Hour. And as a kid, I thought it was hilarious. And I still think, they're kind of like those nostalgic 90s action comedy movies. I don't know. People watch them on TBS when they air or whatever. I do think what's interesting, John, is that by supporting this, Donald Trump is now, I guess they have to get Jackie Chan back, but Jackie Chan is now an avowed communist, right? He pledged his allegiance to the Communist Party of China back in 2022 or 2023.
Oh, Jackie, why? He must have assumed there was going to be no more Rush Hour movies, and
that was
why
it.
not?
I think I pulled it up here.
Oh.
Yeah, here it is. He says it's actually quite remarkable. He gave a speech. He says, "Abroad, they often say proud to be Chinese. I am very lucky to be a Chinese person, but I am also very jealous that you all are party members. I just think the Chinese Communist Party is really so magnificent." And then he goes on to say, "I want to be a party member." And so, going to be an interesting press tour, but kind of a twist of irony here that Donald Trump, the tough on China president, the guy who very much has opposed the Communist Party, is now going to be, sort of propping up the career of a man who has pledged allegiance to it. Very interesting. Only in 2025.
Jackie, come on. I hope that that's a fake AI quote, because that's just completely ridiculous. The other thing too that's
by the official.
it
it was covered at the time. It was carried by the state broadcaster CCTV. It was, I believe, a speech he gave to the Chinese Communist Party. And he's not the only one who, obviously, a celebrity who has kind of gone this way, but this was organized by the Chinese Film Association. The keynote was delivered by Xi himself. So I don't know.
That is a little awkward. But Donald Trump has been having a lot of affinity for communists these days, with his palling around with Zoran Mamdani in the White House.
He also resurrected TikTok.
I'm being facetious here.
Can you imagine if Joe Biden was doing this sort of thing?
That's unbelievable. Well, Jackie Chan is also 71 years old. So like, is he going to be doing kung fu or some kind of like action martial arts?
He is known for doing his own stunts. And it will be, I think, challenging to do his own stunts at that age, even if you are the great Jackie Chan.
Right. I mean, Tom Cruise is great at doing his own stunts. He's not quite 71. But I do think that, though, this whole issue, and even though it's fun that Rush Hour is apparently going to be coming back now, and, you know, it's very lighthearted, I do think this whole concept raises questions, though, about why the president of the United States is getting involved in something like this, putting pressure on the head of a studio. This studio, led by David Ellison, of course, is trying to do what? Trying to buy Warner Brothers Discovery right now. And if the president shines brightly upon you, then maybe this makes everything a little bit easier from the government's perspective for when you want to buy an even larger film studio, right? Like Paramount it's a good sized studio, but Warner Brothers with HBO and CNN and all these other brands in their portfolio, it's a much bigger fish for them. And there is currently a bidding war underway. Trump, though, continues to have this openly positive relationship with the Ellisons. And I think by throwing him a bone yet again, and there's many of these that we can mention, by getting his buddy Brett Ratner back to work on a major high-profile film, I think that all this does is really grease the wheels behind the scenes.
I 100% agree. And it raises the question, too, of like how malleable is David Ellison and Paramount when Donald Trump comes knocking with a request, especially with a deal perhaps, pending that's going to need government approval. And so it seems like when Donald Trump has come knocking, they have decided to give him what he wants. But as you say, when you give a mouse a cookie, everyone knows how that saying goes. They come back for more. And Donald Trump is not someone who is too shy to take advantage of a relationship like that. He's very transactional. And so I imagine he will come back for more. And I also imagine this is probably one of many things that Donald Trump has asked for behind the scenes that we have learned about, right? This came to light because of reporting. It wasn't like Paramount put out a press release saying Donald Trump wanted this movie. But it raises questions about what else is Donald Trump asking for behind the scenes. And, like how much is Paramount giving to Donald Trump?
Yeah, it certainly raises a lot of questions. No release date on this film yet, so we'll keep an eye on that. But certainly raises new questions about the Ellisons and the Trump relationship.
By the way, John, I can't imagine this movie does well at the box office. Like, this was a 1990s sort of like early 2000s movie.
I don't know. You might be surprised. The nostalgia is doing really well. People love these like throwback movies or these remakes. Gen Z didn't get a chance to go to the movie theaters like us and watch Jackie Chan kick some ass in Rush Hour, and maybe
it feels like a cheap Paramount Plus movie. That's what it feels like. If this was on the Netflix title, which by the way, the new Netflix, I can't stand the way it looks anymore, but if it was on there and I was scrolling, would you even stop and watch it? You might watch the trailer and then feel like you've seen the whole movie, but like hard to imagine investing 2 hours on this unless you're really bored. And I can't imagine it's going to do well.
It might work around the holidays, actually. You got family coming over. You want to put something
on streaming,
fun on.
It will do well, but like who's going to pay money to go see this at the box office? Like, I just can't imagine it's going to work. Anyway, we'll see.
Yeah. Good point. I mean, everything has to be eventized now. So if they could somehow turn this into like some kind of like TikTok obsession and Gen Z thing, like
the only hope they have is that Donald Trump encourages all the MAGA fans to go support, Brett Ratner at box office, and Fox News somehow.
They're never going to do it. That's never going to happen.
But again, the problem. I think the problem is one of the main star is like a fan of the Chinese Communist government. Like, that's sort of a problem, I think, if you're going to try appealing to the MAGA audience. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for us this week. Oliver, I hope you get all of your Labubu's on Black Friday this year. Hope you get some deals.
For people who don't know, John is a big Labubu fan. His kids really want a Labubu, but he's been hiding Labubus from his children. And I have pledged to buy, he has 2 kids. I have pledged to buy him 1 Labubu for his kids to share. Which, I'm sure John feels really good about.
Won't at all tear my entire house apart. No, I plan to do future episodes with Labubu's behind me here on the set. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, there's going to be the Labubu floats we're recording before Thanksgiving, of course, but there will be the Labubu float on Thanksgiving Day. And John has also pledged to hide that from his children.
There's no way we're watching that. Like, they're going to immediately ask way too many questions about it. Thanks to Uncle Oliver, we will definitely not be having any Labubus in the house.
No, we are sending
any packages that come our way. We're going to have to hide immediately.
I'll put it under someone else's name then.
I can't afford a Labubu obsession in this house. It's not going to end well for anybody.
John. You're going to get one Labubu this year, and your kids are going to have to share.
Thanks for another great week. Happy holidays. We'll catch you next week. Thank you for listening to Powerlines, a presentation of Status, and a special thank you to Beehive for sponsoring this episode. The show is produced by Matt Havia and Antonio Enriquez in association with In the Arena Studios. Please like, share, and subscribe to Powerlines on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen, and watch full episodes and clips on our YouTube page at Status.